Let's jump right into this explainer and look at a massive historical clash of ideas. We're talking about the fundamental nature of rhetoric. I mean, is the art of persuasion just a dangerous, deceitful tool used for manipulation? Or is it actually the ultimate structured art that we need for civic engagement and, well, literal survival? We're going to break this down through the eyes of two absolute giants of classical Athens, Socrates, who you definitely know, and Aspasia of Miletus, a brilliant intellectual who literally taught the leaders of Athens. To really get Socrates' intense distrust of rhetoric, we've got to look at what was happening around him. In 415 BCE, the Athenian assembly made this disastrous democratic vote to launch the Sicilian expedition, and Socrates used a pretty brilliant analogy to critique it. Imagine a ship trying to navigate a dangerous, rocky strait in the pitch black. The pilot is a total expert, right? Knows every current, every hidden reef. But instead of listening to the pilot, the completely untrained passengers take a majority vote to steer a different way just because it looks clearer to them. I mean, you wouldn't let a crowd of passengers fly a plane today based on a vote, right? Yet Socrates pointed out that the citizens of Athens basically did just that. They ignored experienced military generals and enthusiastically voted for war, all because they got hyped up by some very theatrical, handsome speakers. So the crucial point here really comes down to the difference between these two concepts, opinion and genuine knowledge. Socrates was raising major red flags, warning that Athenian democracy was dangerously morphing into a government ruled by doxa. Doxa is just mere opinion. It's unreflective belief that floats in your mind kind of like oil on water. Pleasant to look at, but offering zero actual foundation. Instead, he argued, we absolutely have to be governed by episteme, which is genuine specialized knowledge, the kind of knowledge that can actually withstand rigorous cross-questioning. Because of this, Socrates viewed the speeches given before that Sicilian expedition as rhetoric in its absolute worst form. To him, it was pure, unadulterated manipulation. He pointed directly at speakers like Alcibiades, this brilliantly smart but incredibly ambitious politician. See, the problem wasn't that Alcibiades knew military strategy. The real danger was that he knew his audience's vanity. He knew exactly which emotional triggers to pull to make thousands of men stand up, cheer, and vote yes, way before they could actually think critically about the insane logistics of invading Syracuse. To Socrates, prioritizing that kind of crowd approval over careful thought, that leads a city straight off a cliff. But to his credit, Socrates didn't just sit around complaining about it. He actually offered a radical remedy to this whole crisis of persuasion, the elenchus. He proposed that before we make any major civic decision, we shouldn't just sit back and watch a theatrical debate where two sides put on a show. Instead, there has to be a sustained, humble cross-examination of our own underlying assumptions. We literally have to interrogate ourselves to figure out if we genuinely know what we think we know, or if we're just getting swept up in the moment by a really charismatic speaker. Section 1. Aspasia of Miletus, Rhetoric as Survival. Now, while Socrates was out there interrogating people in the public square, Aspasia of Miletus was this absolute powerhouse intellectual operating entirely behind the scenes. And to really grasp her philosophy, you have to understand her status as an outsider. She was a metic, which means a foreign-born resident, and of course a woman. In ancient Athens, that meant she had basically zero legal standing. No voting, no holding office, and definitely no standing up to speak in the assembly or the law courts. But paradoxically, that total exclusion gave her a really unique kind of social freedom. She started hosting these incredible intellectual salons, effectively acting as a hidden architect of the curriculum. She was teaching rhetoric to Pericles and even to Socrates himself, literally shaping the civic discourse of Athens from the margins. Because she was totally locked out of formal power, Aspasia's view on rhetoric was vastly different from Socrates. To her, it wasn't some dangerous academic ornament or trick. She called it a woman's ancient inheritance. Think about it. For someone who literally cannot use physical force or legal authority, rhetorical intelligence isn't a luxury. It's developed out of sheer necessity. It becomes your primary instrument for survival and for having any kind of agency. If you can't cast a vote, the absolute only way you can move history is by being better with your words than the men who command the actual armies. So let's look at how she's systematically structured this art of persuasion. She broke it down into 3 essential channels and taught that a master speaker has to constantly weave these together. First, you have logos. That's the actual structural architecture, the solid deductive chain of your argument. Second is ethos, your perceived character and trustworthiness. She argued you have to deeply understand your audience's skepticism or their interest before you even open your mouth. And third, pathos, the emotional resonance of the speech. And that third point, pathos, brings us to a massive point of friction with Socrates. See, Socrates looked at emotional appeal as this inherent, dangerous distraction from the truth. But Aspasia, she pushed back hard on that. She argued that appropriately arousing emotion is absolutely not manipulation. Look at it this way. If she tells you about some grave, horrible injustice and you feel nothing, the failure isn't in your heart. The failure is in her speech. Deception is making someone feel what is false. But pathos, when you use it ethically, is the art of making the listener feel what is fundamentally true. Fraction 2, the unified art, deconstructing the trivium. Now, Aspasia actually agreed with Socrates on one big thing. Manipulation definitely exists. And yeah, it's super dangerous. She was well aware that a smooth talker could make a terrible argument sound amazing. But her remedy wasn't to just throw our hands up and abandon speech altogether. Her remedy was better education, specifically what we call the Trivium, which tightly integrates logic, grammar, and rhetoric. Just look at what happens when you isolate these three. If you only have logic, your reasoning might be ironclad, but you'll be totally ineffective because you can't connect with people. If you just have grammar, well, you're stuck in boring pedantry. And, exactly like Socrates feared, if you have rhetoric without logic, you just end up with pure manipulation and demagoguery. But when you teach them together, you create a fully educated speaker, someone who thinks clearly, structures their language perfectly, and speaks powerfully in the service of the truth. And that integrated trivium? It is the ultimate defense mechanism. A society that actually teaches logic and grammar right alongside rhetoric produces citizens who can instantly spot the sophist's trick. You know the trick. It's that fallacious, incredibly weak reasoning that's heavily disguised by a thick layer of emotional outrage. By understanding exactly how arguments are built, the fully educated speaker, and more importantly, the fully educated listener, just cannot be easily hacked or deceived by theatrical politicians. Section 3. The Modern Synthesis, Spotting Demagoguery in the Digital Age. So, how do we actually take this massive classical clash between Socrates and Aspasia and use it today? Like, how does this help us survive the endless, chaotic, algorithm-driven scroll of our digital media feeds? Well, by combining their insights, we actually get a highly practical, modern checklist. First, apply Socrates' Elenchus. Just pause and ask yourself, is this influencer flattering my vanity right now, or are they actually educating me? Second, check the episteme. Does this person actually have genuine expertise, or are they just charismatic and loud? Then, bring in Aspasia's Trivium. Strip away all the flashy video editing and the dramatic music. Is there an actual logical, deductive chain of facts here? And finally, evaluate the pathos. Am I outraged right now because the facts actually warrant it, or because my emotions are intentionally being hacked for engagement? As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a direct challenge. Before you scroll any further today or click on another sensational headline, take 1 second to pause and ask yourself, are you consuming genuine episteme, real, tested knowledge, or are you just another untrained passenger on a ship, sailing blindly in the dark, voting on where to go just because the speaker on your screen looks and sounds good? It's definitely something to think about. Keep questioning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.